Montana's historic Clark Fork River begins where the Rocky Mountains form the Continental Divide. This river flows west 320 miles to Idaho's largest lake, Lake Pend Oreille. One of its trout-filled tributaries, Rock Creek, pours into the lower Clark Fork River from the lush Cabinet Mountains wilderness, just 15 miles from the Idaho border. This is where Sterling Mining Company wants to build an enormous copper-silver mine. The mining permit, which is jointly issued by Kootenai National Forest and Montana's Department of Environmental Quality, would allow Sterling to tunnel 3 miles beneath the Cabinet Mountains and strike at the heart of wilderness. Operating 24 hours a day for the next 30 years, the mine would dump 3 million gallons of polluted water into the Clark Fork every day and leave behind 100 million tons of mining waste. This wilderness has been labeled one of the most endangered wildlands in the United States. After many years of abuse, the Clark Fork River is healing. For clean water and wilderness advocates, and for those who simply want to protect a quality of life in this little-known corridor of northwestern Montana, this mine poses an unacceptable risk. If permitted, the proposed Rock Creek mine will cause an irretrievable loss of wilderness lands, wildlife, native trout, water quality, and other uses of public resources in the Clark Fork watershed.
Mining is not compatible with those other uses and values. You cannot have both. It's an important and irreplaceable resource that we have got to protect today in order to benefit our children and theirs in the future.
Grizzlies and mining don't mix. What mining brings is industrialization of an area. The grizzly bear is an icon. It's an icon of our national parks such as Glacier and Yellowstone. But it represents wilderness, raw wilderness, an animal that will not be tamed. Travesty of justice that we're not willing to redouble and do whatever it takes, and one of those things is to stop the Rock Creek mine.
The proposed Rock Creek mine would be permitted under the mining law of 1872. This is a law that was passed more than 125 years ago when mining was done with a pick and shovel. And this law says that the highest and best use of our federal public lands is mineral extraction. Here in Montana, we are home to the nation's largest Superfund site. It is 140 miles of the Clark Fork River, which have been contaminated by historic mining. We have an opportunity to do mining different. We have an opportunity to recognize the mistakes we made in the past.
Because of the nature of the topography here, the Clark Fork River is unavoidably in close proximity to where the processing of the ore will take place. Millions and millions of cubic yards of earth will be tunneled out of the ground and processed on the surface.
The mining company would basically tunnel 3 miles beneath the wilderness, and they would construct large rooms whereby they would go in and mine out the ore, and they'd leave thin pillars of rock holding up the overlying lands above the wilderness area.
At the mill facility, the ore is crushed and processed, and the metals are removed. The copper and silver are removed, and the tailings material, which is left over, would then be slurried in a pipeline down to the tailings impoundment facility down near the Clark Fork River. And those pipelines will be carrying copper concentrate and highly contaminated water out of the mill site, and those pipelines are going to parallel Rock Creek for the better part of 7 miles between the mill site and the tailings impoundment. And I think that that's one of the bigger threats that this mine poses, is the potential for pipeline ruptures and spills going directly into Rock Creek. The other major facility associated with the mine would be the tailings impoundment, and that would cover about 320 acres, pretty much wedged right in between the confluence of Rock Creek and the Clark Fork River. I think there's real questions on how that impoundment's going to work and the stability of it, and the long-term implications of putting a tailings impoundment so close to two very important water bodies.
What we are concerned about when we're concerned about mine pollution is we're concerned that when rock is crushed and it's exposed to air, rock that's got sulfur based in it on a natural level leaches out sulfuric acid. And that acid, once it's mobilized, then in turn leaches heavy metals out of rock. And while those heavy metals were part of the rock naturally, they weren't a threat to you or I or river systems because they were stayed locked in that rock. But now they're mobilized and they're in our water and they can move up the food chain.
One of the other big aspects of this mine is the nutrient pollution issues that will be associated with this mine. And the big source of nutrients from a mine like this would be from the ammonium nitrate and fuel oil that is used as a blasting agent to blow the rock up so that they can process it.
And those nutrients are what create algae problems. The Clark Fork River already is seriously threatened by algae. And any increase in nutrients at this place in the river will cost the people downstream their water quality.
One of the big unanswered questions surrounding this mine is what impact digging underneath the wilderness area is going to have on two lakes that lie right above the ore body. There's Cliff Lake and there's Copper Lake that lie directly above the ore body in the wilderness area. And the mining company has not provided any detailed information on the characteristics of the rock there. And the real concern is when they hollow that area out underneath the lakes, that those lakes may in fact drain and we may lose them.
The Clark Fork River has for many decades received pollution and contamination from many different sources.
The states of Montana, Idaho, and Washington have been working for over 5 years to develop a nutrient reduction plan for the Clark Fork. We have too many nutrients and we have too much nuisance algae growth, and those states and communities in Montana particularly have made a real strong commitment to reducing that problem. They've all committed to spending large sums of money, upwards of $50 or $60 million, to reduce the nutrient load in the Clark Fork River and to get rid of some of that nuisance algae.
The proposed Rock Creek mine would take that contamination and put it right back there. While we spend public dollars to clean that river up, that one company would return pollution for private profit into our river.
The state of Montana would not monitor compliance at this mine. That job is given to the mine applicant itself. The mining company monitors themselves and they tell the state whether they're meeting standards and whether they're meeting their permit conditions or not.
Doesn't seem right to me for the state of Montana to permit a mine which will negate and offset, destroy really the good work that's been done on the river and in Lake Pend Oreille.
Rock Creek has been identified as a critical tributary for bull trout. It's important for the fish to be able to spawn in Rock Creek and its tributaries, and those streams are also important for young of the year fish to be able to grow up a little bit before they have to go out into the big world of living in the Clark Fork River. So that section of the river is cut off by dams on the upstream end and on the downstream end. And that has cut off the bull trout population from Lake Pend Oreille from being able to access up into some of those spawning tributaries like the Bull River and Rock Creek. It has caused a problem for migration of bull trout, but it's also heightened the importance of those two drainages of Rock Creek and Bull River, because those are the ones that the bull trout have access to. Those are the ones with good spawning habitat still available, and they're the ones that need to be protected if we're going to see bull trout recovery in the lower Clark Fork.
This mine has the potential of really severing a major wildlife corridor. Because of this industrial activity, there are going to be species that disappear.
The Rock Creek mine will be, in the view of many biologists other than myself, the kiss of death to the remaining Cabinet-Yaak grizzly bear. The problem is we have an island population in an island ecosystem increasingly fragmented by logging roads, clear cutting, with mine proposals and future mining threats. When you're down to 15 to 20 bears and you look at a new mine proposal that basically nuclear divorce the remaining southern third from the rest of it, no rational bear biologist says this bear population has a chance. They may not be willing to speak that openly, but that's the fact. If this mine goes through, it's the end of the game. In effect, the Fish and Wildlife Service has written this area off. They will not say so in a public forum, but they have also not done anything to reverse the current trends of habitat degradation and fragmentation that will lead, if they continue, to the extirpation of the grizzly bear in this region. If the grizzly bear goes, so will go a piece of our own soul, so will go a piece of our own spirituality that really relies on these wild places and these wild animals to exist.
We have one of the most pristine and pure, bodies of water here in the West. If for no other reason than to keep it that way, we'd hate to see it degraded, but certainly we wouldn't want to see any impacts that would adversely affect either the ecosystem or human health.
We have to protect that lake. This mine, however, jeopardizes the quality of the water in Lake Pend Oreille. And that resource is tremendously valuable. That lake is the economic engine of the Sandpoint area.
The mining industry will often come in and offer modern mining as a method of diversifying. And in the best of cases, it can be, but so much more frequently what it is a boom and bust approach to economic growth. Short-term jobs, long-term pollution.
Any economic impact that would occur from the mine would likely be negative, from the possibility of degrading of water quality or impacts on the fishery, on the value of the local waterfront real estate, on the effects on tourism.
Less than 1/10 of 1% of the total jobs and less than 1/10 of 1% of the total income in Montana comes from mining. And mining is not compatible with very many other things. Mining takes it all. Where you have a mine, you don't have anything else. You have to accept that you're going to have just mining, that all of your eggs are in that basket.
The local economy is undergoing a healthy diversification, and it's no longer relying on extractive industry. People are moving to the area because of the beauty of the area. They want to live near the wilderness. They want to live along the Clark Fork River, Lake Pend Oreille.
Mining reduces the long-term economic value of a place. Mining destroys the land. It cannot be reclaimed back to the way it was with hard rock mining. With mining, you can't have anything else. It is exclusive use of an area.
If the grizzly bear goes, it is also a barometer of the health of these ecosystems. If the grizzly bear goes out of these regions, that is the canary in the coal mine that spells trouble for other wildlife and eventually ourselves and the human communities that depend upon the land.
We are meant to have quiet and solitude and be able to get away from the industrial world in places like this. Mining is not compatible with those other uses and values. You cannot have both.